Hey everyone, in this episode we are going to talk about Rampage. We're going to talk about how The Rock did bring his star power to this movie and our expectations of that. We're going to see how this compares to some other video game adaptations we reviewed previously. All that and more in episode 31 of the Reel-ists podcast. Team Reel-ists, thanks for listening to this episode. I am Oscar.
I'm Donnie.
And we have our producer, Ruben, as always. Hi. And we have a special guest, Donnie's ego, alter ego. I don't know. Just trying to spice it up, getting people excited.
I do have an alter ego, but
he's not here today.
I can't reveal him to our listeners.
But you just confirmed he is real.
But he is real.
Dun, dun, dun. It's on a special podcast. You can't
Maybe he'll join us one day.
I'm kind of now curious about this alter ego.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't have one. I'm going to go make him up. Can we do that?
Sure, why not? By the end of this episode, I want you to be someone else.
Okay.
I want you to be genetically edited like the monsters.
You want me to freaking have scales and pointy things sticking out of my spine?
I mean, not visually.
And I'm trying to destroy this apartment.
All right. I mean, I don't know about destroying the apartment. We live here, so don't destroy our place where we have to sleep. Maybe somewhere else. Maybe next door. But no. Yes, so today's movie is Rampage with The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Uh-huh. Before we get into that, we do want to just briefly cover the Reel-ists podcast. In case you're a first-time listener, welcome. Glad to have you. If you're a returning visitor or listener, welcome back. Those are welcome back.
A returning visitor.
So Rampage, in case you guys are wondering, in case you guys missed it over the weekend and you guys were just, watching A Quiet Place again, or was there anything special this weekend? I feel like there was another event going on. I know Disneyland had Pixar Fest. That's what my mind was. I think that's what my thought was. But Rampage, what is that about? It's about when 3 different animals become infected with the dangerous pathogen. A primatologist and a genetic team up to stop them from destroying Chicago. Good old world-destroying, monsters fighting, The Rock being the hero we need type movie.
Hey, bro, don't spoil it.
And with that is your spoiler warning. So, is that the alter ego?
I know. Very aggressive, very...
But, yes. So, I guess we can go straight into that. I don't think we have any housekeeping, so let's go straight into it. Mm-hmm. Donnie, what are your initial thoughts walking out of this movie? What are your thoughts of this movie?
My thoughts of the movie. Okay, so I didn't have any really kind of expectations for the film.
Why so?
Because I knew it was a world-saving kind of film. I knew who was the lead actor, The Rock. The trailer shows a lot. There's this ape. He gets bigger and larger and angrier and starts, trying to destroy the world. And then you have all these other large creatures trying to do the same thing. So the kind of film it's going to be. It's going to be a lot going on, a lot of buildings smashing, a lot of glass breaking, a lot of, firefighters and policemen and special troops and all the army and military trying to stop these creatures. It's not anything groundbreaking, what the movie is going to be. And in The Rock's in it, so he's going to be the hero, the one to save the day, the one that he's the only one who can figure out how to stop these people or these animals. Sorry,
there are some people in the way. Maybe
there are people, yeah. But so my expectations for the film weren't I didn't go in thinking, oh, they're gonna be some award-winning performances and things like that. I knew it was going to be fun. I knew it was going to be action-filled, action-packed to the max, and I knew kind of where the storyline would go, and it met those those I guess kind of expectations. It met those. I wasn't disappointed.
Expectations.
It was it was a fun film to watch for what I thought it was going to be.
Okay. All right, I'm right there with you. I didn't have much going into this, just given that The Rock has been doing a typecast type role recently with his movies. You know that if he's playing the hero and it's a blockbuster movie, you kind of understand where the plot's going to go. I mean, I didn't have any kind of expectation that I was going to be wowed by anything. I think the trailer kind of showed you all the wildness of like the monsters and how them destroying the city, and I think like the trailers also depict like the wolf flying for like a brief second. So like the little things that would have been like,
and
whoa,
they show
that's cool.
The crocodile in the trailer too, and
like those little things that probably would have been like, I didn't see that coming, or that was awesome, were kind of already shown. So I think with that being said, it is a little more of like, it's going to meet the bare minimum of what makes a movie, but in a way it's still, because it's almost mindless, that you don't really have to put much thought into it. You just watch what happens.
It's an easy watch. Like you don't have to super like focus in or listen to the dialogue or make catch everything they say. It's laid out like in the easiest way for you to get.
And it starts immediately too. Yeah. There's no like 45 minutes of them building up what's going to happen and then it happens. It happens rather quickly.
I did like the beginning. I'm not gonna lie. I was
the outer space.
Yeah, they started off in outer space, and for a split second I was like, oh, "Dang, are we in the wrong movie?" This is like Gravity, Life. Remember that movie, Life?
Yeah.
I was like, "Are we in the right theater?" And then I was like, you realize you are. But it was cool. But yeah, right off the bat, they're like, "Listen, this is an action film, so we're gonna show you." Like action, as soon as it starts, this is what you signed up for. Like we're giving you the action from start to finish.
And it's crazy because I think that's the only scene that The Rock is really not in that sense. Like once he's presented, I don't think you don't get much without him. Like I think you see a combination of like 15 minutes without The Rock. Like the rest of it, he's mainly on screen, which is crazy. A lot amount of screen time.
Oh yeah.
I do want to briefly talk about kind of the typecast that he does bring to you, Donnie. I think that's something that's very interesting. That the idea is that his presence, his star power in this movie, is what helped make it the number one box office winner with I believe it was about $35 million. When the expectation was that this movie was going to be about 25 million, if not lower. So, I mean, do you think it's because you know what you're getting with The Rock that people go see that, or do you actually think it's the material he is in that people are interested in? What do you think on that?
I think when we see a movie with The Rock in it, we know it's going to be it's going to be entertaining. I think he just carries a lot of entertainment value with him from project to project, and we know, we're going to be able to kind of get lost in this outlandish, over the top like story. So I think people, that's a big reason why people love those kind of films, like those kind of action packed, where so much is going on. I think that's, and it appeals to such a broad audience. You can take the kids to see it. You can go on, like take your, person in a relationship to see it. Like it does, like anyone can see it. It doesn't just focus on like just adolescents or just this is for adults only. Right. Or it's not just a kids movie. It's like the whole family can go. So, so I think that's what it is. And like, I mean, just entertaining and
I mean, it's just really fascinating that because nowadays most actors don't have that star power anymore. I know there are a few that you can probably mention that would be like, oh yeah, I expect, some kind of box office numbers, high box office numbers. Some directors used to have that. It's not so much anymore. Like it is becoming to me a more material-based attraction. A lot of people want that big property movie adaptation. Comic books is probably like the current one right now. Video games never had that reputation of being a draw, but yeah, I think The Rock is being able to do that, and he's all coming off of Jumanji, which surpassed a lot of people's expectations.
Yeah, I mean everybody has. I still haven't seen it, but so many people have seen that film and really liked it. So he's kind of.
But I think that one was a combination of who he was with too. But the thing is, I think he's done a movie with Kevin Hart, I believe, right? I don't think that was their first time.
Prior to Jumanji.
I feel like they have done. Was it Central Intelligence? Yes, they did Central Intelligence.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
We kind of knew what you expect. He was a police officer. Kevin Hart was.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, okay. I remember I didn't watch it still, but I remember the trailer and I know what movie you're talking about.
But so, I mean, I think Jack Black portraying a girl in a video game world, I think that was like another draw that people wanted to see. So, I mean, there was some things that did bring in, and the franchise of Jumanji is beloved by audiences. Not that this is a Jumanji coverage, but I can see that, he is putting himself with titles that people would be interested in. Fast and Furious franchise is another one that he's put himself in. I think some of the movies that he's doesn't have a draw, like a property draw, like Skyscraper coming out. Mm-hmm. I don't know how that can do without something already established. Because a lot of these things that he's been coming out with recently have been things that are adaptation of some form.
Yeah, like remakes or...
Yeah. And the movies that haven't been, I don't know if they've drawn the numbers. I would have to look into that, but it's just really fascinating that he's still one of the few actors that, based off his name, you most likely will go see it. Mm-hmm. Maybe not the first week, but the following weeks.
At some point, you'll see it.
Yeah, on a weekday when your day off or something like that. Yeah, very fascinating. But to get back into the movie, I did want to briefly just ask you this question: did you care about George, the gorilla, the main animal in this movie?
I did, like, towards the end. Not even it didn't take me to the end to start caring about him, like, but like, yeah, I was into it, and I you can see their bond that they have together, and they made George very humanized, and I think that part of the fact that he was able to sign was obviously like what made him even more relatable and more, I guess, kind of beloved by the audience. So I did like him, and I was happy that he did not die.
Oh, speaking of that, go ahead, tell the story you were mentioning prior to the start.
I was telling Oscar that I was reading an article that The Rock basically almost like left this movie because originally they wanted George to die, and they wanted it to kind of be like this sacrificial death and like kind of spin it at that angle, but The Rock was like not having that, and he was like, no, like I don't want people to come to my movie and like leave feeling sad or blah blah blah. So they changed it and kept him
That's
alive.
Star power right there.
Right.
you go tell an actor in an independent film, I'm leaving if you guys don't change this. They be like, bye.
Like, deuces. We already got your backup. We called him right now. He's coming.
Right. He's already on his way.
But yeah, this was they definitely. I mean, I think they made the right move. Like, obviously, they're gonna like do what they need to keep The Rock.
Yeah.
I don't think this film would have done as well if it was.
I question that. I question that. If The Rock's involvement kept this movie at bay. I mean, because normally when you see a movie like this, yes, you're not expecting to be, amazed and see something you've never seen before, or in some sense you kind of are, because these are three animals destroying buildings. So I feel like with Rampage, you kind of can't go in a way that these animals continue surviving. Like, I feel like maybe it would have put a nice little bow to like the franchise, because I don't want to see a Rampage 2. What more are you gonna do? You're gonna say, oh, they made the mistake again and more animals now have mutated. Like, I feel like with this movie, it's a one-time movie that you have the opportunity to tell and have fun with it, but I don't know, keeping George alive kind of makes it feel like if they do a sequel, there's gonna be another set of monsters that got the power. Now instead of Chicago, now it's San Francisco.
Yeah, it's like, they weren't able to like to rescue all those things that came from outer space. Like, maybe there was one that they never found, and then
right.
3 different monsters came in contact with it and are now trying to destroy a different city.
We only thought it was 3, but yeah, I mean, and the game itself, Rampage, in case anyone isn't aware, it's an arcade game. It started as an arcade game, and it's very basic. You button smash buildings. Each character has like a unique thing that they have to do, and George has to eat women that are in red dresses. Like, that's how he gets like his power up, which
that's crazy.
In this movie there was a little nod to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was very simple. That, like, you really wouldn't think of like, how do you make a movie out of a simple arcade game? So I can see them trying to stretch it and say like, oh, we're trying to genetic edit all that. That part was added onto the movie. That wasn't part of like the original game. Like, I don't even think the game says the origin of these monsters is just choose one monster, go button smash your heart out. Did you ever play Rampage?
No, I've never played. I didn't even know it was originally a game until like a little bit before we saw the film. So that's interesting, and it makes sense because when we were watching the movie and he ended up eating a woman in a red dress, and I was like, okay, he eats people now, like that. It didn't make sense to me, but then you said, well, that's what he did to level up in the game. So I'm like, oh, that totally makes sense. I guess people should know that before they go see the movie, so it doesn't seem like it comes out of nowhere that he all of a sudden likes to eat people now. But that was cool.
I mean, it's like they took the core of a city being destroyed. We're saying world, but in this movie it was only a city. They didn't get far.
and there was, I think it was the guy, Jeffrey Dean
Morgan.
Yeah, his character that was like said something like, well, now that you saved the world. And I was like, he saved Chicago. It wasn't the world. I wouldn't quite say it was the world, but okay.
I mean, it could have gotten there.
Potentially, maybe the United States. Maybe he saved the country. I don't know about the world. I thought that was a little comical that he said that. I was like, it's kind of...
It's a little blockbuster movie line.
Yeah, no, she saved the world.
So the characters are, the only one I believe. So it's George, who's the gorilla, Ralph, who is the wolf, and Lizzie, who is in this case, crocodile.
So those are the names.
Those are the actual names of the characters and there are more. They're not the only ones. They're the core three that started the arcade game, but there's more monsters. So if they wanted to, yes, they could make another movie, but it would be more of the same, and I don't think you would really want to see that. In a video game, it sounds cool to be like, oh, now I can be another, monster and destroy, but like a movie-wise, I don't know. I how I like to think about how they can go about with the sequel. This one's kind of like, it's going to be the same. Like,
yeah, I wouldn't need a sequel.
And it's in the same way in like The Hangover 2, Part 2 was like a repeat of what...
You just know you're going to get the same thing.
Yeah.
Just some of the details are going to be slightly different, but
yeah, so it's I get what they were trying to go for, and I do think that the parts that weren't based on the video game were interesting, like the genetic editing. My question was like, why can't they do it on human? Why do you want to do it on? Well, I know they didn't plan to do these on these animals, but they did on that rat in the beginning, which was creepy to think that there's a big rat like attacking you.
Yeah, I know.
In a confined space.
I mean, if a little rat came and like tried to run at me on my foot and attack me, I would freak out. So I can't imagine like the rat the size of a freaking, pony, like coming at me.
It's just that was a nightmare. Could have gone with the horror film with this movie with that beginning. But yeah, so the only one that was changed was Lizzie. Originally, it's like a Godzilla monster type, but I don't think they can do like a... Because, it was...
like it was a crocodile.
It was like they based it on animals, and in the game, it was a gorilla. What if it did,
wolf. We just saw Godzilla come out? Then I probably would have walked out. I'm like, come on. I get this is one of those movies, but like...
because this movie it's a mixture of an adaptation of a monster movie and an adaptation of a video game. So they did have to do that setup. In some ways, it did feel like very similar to Godzilla movies with they're coming. Oh, they attacked one place. They're not stopping. We need to do something.
Yeah.
Luckily, I think Godzilla's always been like, I don't want to say a good guy, but he's been more of like, I don't want to harm anyone. I just want peace.
Yeah,
and
he's
something
just trying to live his life. Like, let him be. Dang.
But back to the original question about caring for George. Personally, I didn't really have much care for George.
Why?
There wasn't anything to really appreciate about him. Like, I understand that his situation, they do explain a little bit of how he came into the San Diego Zoo and how the Rock
was rescued.
Be like part of it.
Poachers.
Yeah, I totally understand that. That felt forced. His origin, like, it has to be a sad origin. Why can't it just be like, he saved, like, the Rock was in the jungle and George saved him for something, or something that created a bond that felt more, would have been better, I think, than a sad story, and therefore the Rock is taking care of George, and here is George now taking care of the world. I don't know. I felt like a lot of it was very 2D. And I know with animals it's hard because you don't want them to talk, because then once they talk, then they're not realistic enough. But I don't know. I don't feel like in this case we cared about the animal, about George.
I mean, I still didn't even think it
their
was that realistic, because, I mean, even the whole thing of like him being able to sign and The Rock and them like communicating. The Rock sometimes would not sign to him; he would just talk to him, and he knew exactly what he was saying.
Yeah,
and The Rock would like say like use like slang and jargon and or like idioms when speaking, and I'm like, they wouldn't. As far as I know, they wouldn't teach, like, for instance, the Coco, the gorilla that can sign, who can sign over like 300 words or phrases or something like that. Like they're not. I don't think they've taught her like an expression. Like I don't think they've taught them words that like didn't teach them the literal meaning.
Right.
Like they wouldn't be like, "Oh, you're a stick in my side." Like they wouldn't teach the gorilla that. So like when The Rock had said something
like with George's dark humor.
Like with the sarcasms, like he wouldn't be able to. That's where the realism got lost to me, which was fine because it was entertaining and like it was cool to see like they were able. It
brought the comedic elements, yeah.
Yeah, it was comedic elements and it reinforced their bond together and showed they really are friends. Like that is really like I'm sure The Rock's, not The Rock, but his character's best friend. But yeah, that was the only part. But it was cool. It was fine.
Yeah, I mean, especially the other two monsters got the short end of the stick. They were villains to some extent, in that we just saw them only do bad things, and George, we kind of saw a good thing. They try to go around it with like, oh, the genetic editing is causing their like brains to not be clear, like it's causing them to just think, or bad. Well, how would be the best way? Like they're just very aggressive.
Well, yeah, I mean,
they're not trying to be aggressive.
Well, and then they had that sonar satellite thing sending out those like radio frequency waves, and it was like it's gonna cause them to like do anything they can to get to that antenna and destroy it,
which brought them to the city, and that caused the city. Yeah, because naturally they were just doing their own things. Really, the animals just were drawn to that by the real bad guys in these movies, who were CEOs and lead. I don't know if she was a scientist necessarily, but she definitely sounded like she knew her stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
both of the bad guys, they were brother and sister who were running the company that created the genetic editing.
The brother was more so just kind of did whatever the sister told him to do.
Yeah,
I mean, really villainous.
I didn't like the characters either. To be honest, there was not many characters that you really rooted for. Personally, the character that I liked out of everyone was Jeffrey Dean Morgan's government character, and that was just because I thought he was going to play the typical I'm trying to control this and all that. Like he kind of was like, all right, they seem like they got this. I'm just going to follow the lead, follow what I can do, and like he went to go attempt to arrest the brother and sister, and like he did like his own little thing, and I kind of like that. And it wasn't more of like I'm the government, I can do whatever I want, which I thought it was, and it kind of played off in that first scene that we meet him when they're in the helicopter, when the airplane up in the sky, but it changed after that, so I think that was nice. The Rock's character, I was like, at first it was like he was just trying to help George, and then it became more of like, oh, I'm trying to stop George, and now I'm trying to stop the destruction. It was like, that's a big task for one person.
Yeah, a lot of responsibility to put on one character.
And
I also too felt like, speaking of the villains, like I felt like they were trying to like, I felt like I wasn't getting lost, but I was like, I would think one person was the villain, and then I would think the next person is the villain, and then they die. So for instance, the first one, the Joe Magnum Marshmallow, whatever his name is, he was, like the big, muscly, like shooter, like gonna kill these creatures. And I thought he had like a very villainous look in his eye. I thought he was gonna be the villain
too.
Yeah. But then he died. He got eaten by the wolf. So I'm like, okay, he's not the villain. Next. Then I thought Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character was gonna be the villain. Did I say his name right?
Yeah.
Because he came off like, yeah, I work for the government. We're gonna do things my way. Blah blah blah. Like he had The Rock and Naomi Harris detained and, you know, brought on the ship. So I thought he was going to be the villain. And then he ended up being like an ally with them, which was great. And I liked it. And I liked how his character kind of like realized that he was kind of out of his element. And, you know, and knew like The Rock and
he owed him. I know he owed him a little bit because he saved his life.
Because he saved his life. So then he wasn't the villain. So I'm like, all right. And then ended up the CEOs being the villain. Mainly the sister, the woman. And she wasn't even, she was a villain. But she wasn't that villainous to where, like, I hated her. Like, my rage wasn't boiling, you know, for, like, to see something bad happen to her. Like, she just wasn't that villainous to me. There are some villains that you hate right off the bat, and they keep getting away with things, and it just makes you angrier and angrier, and the tensions build up throughout the film, so that finally when something does happen to them, you get this, like, instant relief, and it's like, oh, like, yes, they killed them.
Yeah.
Yes, they die. Yes. When she got eaten by George, I was like, okay. But I wasn't so satisfied. Like, thank you. Woo. Like, start clapping. Thank you. She needed to get eaten. So I feel like they could have, like, done something better to villainize her a little more.
Yeah. I totally see what you're saying there. It is one where it's like they were trying to follow a common movie route in saying, like, here's your hero, here's your fighters, and here's your villain. Let it play out. And I feel like this is an example of a video game adaptation where you can take the idea of what this movie was about monsters loose and destroying the city, and instead of going with that element, if that's your core of the movie, I feel like that could have been your reasoning as to putting a situation where, you know, you have a lot of characters. Can you imagine, though, like, if this movie wasn't about the monsters, but this movie was about random characters in Chicago during this, and, like, the freak out of you have a gorilla all of a sudden, you know, attacking you and stuff like that. Like, I think that would have been an interesting take, because we've seen these movies before in different ways, that I think it would have been nice to keep the concept of monsters in a city destroying it and just take that and run with it with another plot. And I think an example that kind of did that was Cloverfield. Like, it wasn't a monster. You weren't following the monster necessarily. You were following characters that were in the city. Mm-hmm. It would have brought us something different that would have been more appealing than a typical route of there's your hero, there's your monster, there's the one that's doing all this, and they're still trying to, you know, think that they have it in control kind of thing. Yeah. So it did disappoint me. But my expectation wasn't high to begin with to say, I know. Like, you know.
Which I'm kind of glad, because, I mean, I got what I want. I got what I expected to get.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. I know, so it is a video game adaptation, so it has to be compared to the video games that's come out before, and at least the ones we've covered. Ready Player One and Tomb Raider. Mm-hmm. Does this rank at the bottom of those? Do you see this one being one that if someone says, oh, what's a good video game adaptation, do you feel like this would be one you would just mention in the sense that you have a good list, not like you only know this one and Tomb Raider, so you're gonna be like, yeah, watch Rampage,
right? I wouldn't say like, oh yeah, it totally captures the video game, you know. I mean, I feel like it, like I said, it's a fun movie, but like I definitely wouldn't be like, out of at least the three you just named, Ready Player One, Tomb Raider, and this one would be at the bottom for me. That's all I got.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough.
I mean, it would for you too, right? I mean,
for this one,
I'm assuming it would be at the bottom for you as well.
It would still be at the bottom, because this is exactly what is hurting the video game adaptation. It's adding to the curse that we can say it's being there, which is you take a concept that people can play as. You can play as a monster. It'd be cool if we can play as the monsters, absolutely. And you make us watch something we don't control. So it's like you removed what we liked about playing the game, and now you're making us watch these characters that are quote unquote based off of the game, but when realistically they're just generic, and you know, you could make them any character. Like, they just happen to be similar to the monsters in the video game, but it's not really like you're watching part of the video game.
Right. Whereas, like, for instance, like Lara Croft, like I felt like there were moments where I'm like, oh, I really feel like I'm watching the game or like playing the game.
Right.
But like I didn't I mean, based off of what you told me about the game Rampage, it didn't seem like that. The story kind of went. They added like different like kind of layers to it too, with the whole genetic editing and then they putting.
They try to explain it. Yeah, and I think that's
putting
where the
like
movie
scientific theories into it, and so I think it just.
But I think the good example would be like the beginning of it was very interesting because it had a horror element. It wasn't, you didn't when you watch the monsters destroying the city. You're not scared. You're not in any way, shape, or form backing off and like, okay, maybe this is too much. I can't watch this. You're totally like, destroy that building. I don't care who's in it. Like, you don't have really much care because you're not necessarily in this world. You're not accepting you're in this world. You're watching this world. So, but that it would have been like they did have the right idea of, adding some backstory to it, and some of the backstory was interesting. The whole idea of genetic editing is not new, but it's a fascinating topic. I think probably more fascinating for humans to experiment with, aka Captain America. I mean, he's not kind of like genetically, but just saying.
Just had to throw that out there.
I wonder why. I wonder what's coming out soon. Marvel, hire me.
I know, seriously.
But yeah, so ultimately, it had ideas that could have played well if it didn't feel like it had to follow a cliche video game adaptation route.
Right.
Ultimately. But was there any scene that stood out to you?
Not to like pick the most like kind of like obvious scene, but like when we thought George was dying, I really was getting sad. I was like, dang, like, why?
What monster you like?
Yeah, but then he ended up not dying, and it was like kind of comical, and like The Rock was like, wait, did I just see your eye open and close and blah blah, and then he like flipped him off, I think too, and so it was like it was a relief, and then it was like some comedy that came with it, so that was like
which is what The Rock wanted,
which is exactly what this whole thing was about, right? So thank you, Rock, for sticking to your guns and making George not die. But yeah, I like that. It was fulfilling. It made me like it made me leave the theater on a high note.
Okay.
So
my favorite scene was the airplane scene.
Oh yeah.
For the fact that you kind of knew that it wasn't going to go well, and it was in a small space, and at that point, if I was in that situation, I'd be terrified too, because I'm like, I have no way out.
Yeah.
I don't know why people in movies constantly shoot when like the first 10 bullets you shot are not doing anything. I don't understand movie logic to that extent. Like everyone was shooting these monsters when that's not working. So wouldn't your next stop be let's make sure we can get everyone out? I don't know why you needed a line of defense that was not doing anything.
Or like up the ammo, or be like okay, we're gonna, guns aren't working. Let's like go to missiles now. Try some missiles, and if missiles don't work, all right, let's
bomb the entire city.
Yeah, like or something.
I hope that's not the military's thinking. If we actually had a monster in real life, that would be real terrifying. But I hope their thinking is not, let's just keep shooting.
Yeah, let's just keep wasting all this ammo.
Right. And be like, can't you guys, don't we have some kind of scientist that can be like, let's create a force field that would prevent this animal from leaving the city?
I was just thinking that.
Like I don't
contain
know.
It some way.
Right.
I don't know.
Can we trick it with like putting like that sound wave on like different corners of the city to kind of like make it always go back and stay within it? I don't know.
Or they should just invent a super large, heavy-duty tranquilizer. Like a normal tranquilizer gun, but like times 100.
Right.
With the needle that's like, 5 feet long.
That like an airplane,
so if we
like
ever
an airplane has to like hit directly on the animal.
And like, aim for like a soft tissue part of the body, like the eyeball or like, a gill or something. What The Rock kind of tried to do with the crocodile, he tried to shoot his gill thing.
But something. I mean, that was just. I just realized that because they in the airplane scene, they're trying to shoot George down, and it's like he's still attacking you guys. Yet you guys think, let me continue shooting. Like at that point, when I see George is not being damaged, and he just killed one of my crew, my ass is hiding. Or I said, oops, I said a bad word. Nope.
Okay.
But I mean, that's what I would do. I don't know. I just don't see myself, it's just being like, I'm going to continue shooting and hope he doesn't
Yeah, and
kill
keep
me.
bringing attention to myself.
Right. Be like, open up the back door of the plane. I'm going to parachute out.
That's when I play dead.
Right. Exactly. But that little part was the talk between Jeffrey Dean Morgan and our main characters, all that, the Justice League reference, all that was fun to see. So that's my favorite scene, but it was a small scene.
Okay.
A small scene in a big movie.
But it made a big impact.
To me. With all that being said, what is your real score for this movie?
I'm probably gonna give it 2 out of 5 reels.
Okay.
Just for all the ththings I said, I knew where the story was gonna go. It was, typical at this point, The Rock movies. He's the one to save the day, and we're gonna see all this destruction and all these really close calls, but he's gonna survive it, and he's gonna stop the antagonist or the bad guy, and yeah. It was fun. It was entertaining. Wouldn't see it again. But, I got what I expected. But, yeah, it's going to be 2 out of 5.
You mean you're not going to watch it again on digital HT in Spanish? What?
I'll let you do that.
My score is 1.5, which is a tie to my other low score. But it to me, it was one where The Rock didn't do anything different that make this memorable. Like his care for George was understandable, but it went too far into this is just another setting for you to be a hero and save the day. I feel like maybe the animals should have taken the most screen time. Like, can you imagine if this movie had no people or had small main characters of people and it was just the animals? That would have been different. I mean, I don't know. I feel like this movie...
Yeah, that would have been different. I don't know if I would have been into that. It would have been different.
You feel like without humans, you wouldn't watch this movie? Says the one that watches nature movies.
Says the one that what?
Watches nature movies.
Nature documentaries. Yes, I watch nature documentaries.
So what's wrong with one gorilla that you probably would see doing its natural thing now?
That's not natural. I don't watch a nature documentary so I could be like, oh, I hope this crocodile starts like sign languaging or whatever, talking.
But I mean, I don't know. I feel like it could have done something different, and it didn't.
Crocodile cannot sign language. I know.
And The Rock did.
Ruben chuckled when I said that.
It's oh my gosh, are you trying to keep score of like laugh track?
That's the third time he's chuckled since this episode has been recording.
He's chuckled 5 times for my joke. We're gonna have
4.5.
We're gonna have that. We're gonna have like someone keep score. Actually, he didn't laugh at any of you guys' jokes. He's laughing at how bad your jokes are.
Right.
But no, ultimately, I felt like it missed a lot of things. It had some nice elements, very small that you can enjoy, but ultimately it didn't do anything that makes this stand out in a video game adaptation world, in a monster movie world, in a lot of its genres that it hit. I feel like it definitely didn't do that, and we didn't care about the animals. I feel like that should have been the biggest selling point, is these animals who are going to be like your fighters. So you can kind of like, it would have been cool. Like, can you imagine if you're like, oh, I'm Team Ralph, I love the wolf, I love what he can do, or I'm Team George because I love the strength and all that. Like, that would have been nice to have been like, I'm rooting for this animal to win instead of go Rock, save the world. But
yeah,
that's my score.
Sure.
Everyone that's listening, let us know what you guys thought about this movie, Rampage. Did you guys go in it with similar expectations of you just want to have something to enjoy popcorn with and a night out from the house? Did this, was this a movie that you really wanted it to succeed? Were you a Rampage fan? There's multiple games of that franchise, so I can see, some video game fans not liking this or maybe liking it. Let us know all that. Any of your thoughts about Rampage would be happy to hear from you. Don't forget to continue listening to us every Thursday. Any of our podcast platforms. And that's, do you want to list them? You love to list them.
Spotify, SoundCloud,
Google Play.
Wait,
it looked like okay.
Google Play, iTunes, YouTube. There's another one with an S. What's the other S one? SoundCloud. Spotify,
So it's a song of Shawn Mendes. Kind of.
Stitcher.
Yeah. There you go.
And then on our website, therelistpodcast.libsyn.com.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you.